Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the Daily Debate. My name is Ahmed Nader, and tonight we're going to focus on the expected arrival of His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi to the G7 summit for the most industrialized nations in the world, and Egypt being invited in the capacity of a partnership which is being hosted by the French President and France in the city of Evian from the 15th, from today and until the 17th of the month of June. And we will be shedding more light on the important participation of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and the expected bilateral relations that will be discussed and the bilateral meetings that will be held between His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and several leaders from across the globe, more specifically with the US President Donald Trump after the conclusion of the agreement between the US and Iran and ending the war, the memorandum of understanding that we have seen being signed or will be signed officially on Friday in a ceremony, but the agreement has taken place for the past 12 to 24 hours. And to be shedding more light on those important topics, I'm honored to be having with me in the studio for tonight Ambassador Rao'f Saad, the Senior Foreign Assistant Foreign Minister. Thank you very much for being with us tonight.
Most welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
Anytime. First of all, we'll be having the top stories for today that took place throughout the past 24 hours, and President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi headed for France, where he participates in a summit of the Group of 7 industrial nations, scheduled to be held in the city of Evian between June the 15th until the 17th. It is President al-Sisi's second participation in the summit in France since August of 2019, while Egypt was holding the African Union's presidency. Presidential spokesman Mohammed al-Shinawi said that Egypt's participation in the G7 summit on a partnership capacity affirms the pivotal role in enhancing development and stability efforts in the Middle East. He added that President al-Sisi is scheduled to hold meetings with a number of leaders of the participating countries on the sidelines of the summit. On top of them is the US President Donald Trump. Ambassador Rao'f Saad, the importance of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi's participation in the G7 summit on both the political and economic levels, how would you describe it?
Well, well, first of all, good evening and thank you for inviting me.
Anytime.
This is a long story. I think it's not enough to have a half an hour to talk about it, but let me tell you the following. In order to reach to the answer to your question is, let me remind the people that the watchers of this program that in 1993, the same meeting of the G20 was held in Evian. And at that time, the whole world was still in a tense situation due to the invasion of Iraq.
Yes.
So, but now, this year, it's being convened under very, very exceptional situation that has global implications everywhere, namely the war between Iraq and Iran. Just to begin by answering your question, inviting President Sisi is not a courteous invitation. It's a political assessment and appreciation and reflection of the role of Egypt and the recognition of the role of Egypt that has been experienced and practiced during the war between Iran and the United States and before, during the Gaza war.
Yes.
And I think it has been proved once again that Egypt, it's not a matter of leadership or slogans, but Egypt is the core of stability in the Middle East. Not only because of its geographic position, but because of the way Egypt governed the situation, not necessarily in over public show-off.
Wisely.
Wisely and implicitly.
Yes.
And you know, the history would reveal the quality, the volume of information, of pressures that has been put on Egypt, as well as the efforts that have been exerted by Egypt, I would say behind closed doors, under surface, name it the way you like.
Yes.
But this is well recognized and seen and felt by the world, the whole world. And you can see, for example, one of the proofs of this kind of assessment is see how Egypt is running its relations with all the parties, even the conflicting parties.
Yes.
Yeah, so the way it's being run or governed is governing the crises is being run by patience, wisdom, self-control, together with very intensive and extensive efforts, everywhere by the president himself or through the Minister of Foreign Affairs. So inviting him not in a kind of official capacity.
Yes.
Beyond Egypt. I mean, he was invited as chairman of the AU. Now he is being invited on Egypt's own.
Yes.
This is something. They don't do that out of feelings or emotions. They do that because they know that his presence is very important to the agenda.
Yes.
Right. And that, let's move then to the agenda itself. All right. The meeting.
But before the agenda, because we will be shedding more light throughout the episode on the participation of President Sisi in the G7. But we'll be heading to another top story for today, as President Sisi received the UAE President Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, and President Abdel Fattah Sisi received on Monday the President of the UAE, Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, who has arrived on a brotherly visit to Egypt. The presidential spokesman, Mohammed Al-Shinawi, said that both the Arab leaders held talks tackling the means of enhancing distinguished bilateral ties between the two countries, as well as exchanging the views on a number of regional and international issues of mutual concern. President Sisi renewed Egypt's stable stance in supporting the United Arab stability and sovereignty. President Sisi affirmed the UAE and the Gulf countries' security is an essential part of the Egyptian national security. Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, for his part, revealed the extreme appreciation to the generous hospitality offered by President Sisi. Presidential spokesman said that the two presidents welcomed the recently reached deal to stop the war in Iran and to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. President Sisi reviewed the Egyptian vision towards the ongoing situation in the region with the aim of restoring security and stability. Ambassador Rao'f, Saad, a multifaceted visit because the UAE President will be participating in the G7 summit as well. The Iran-US deal is affecting directly the economic stance and the political stance and the social even stance of the United Arab Emirates citizens. For the past 4 months we have seen several attacks targeting the Abu Dhabi state, and how do you see the importance of the visit for today ahead of both presidents participating in the G7 summit in France?
All right. Well, that would move from Evian to Cairo.
Yes.
Right. But we'll have to go back to Evian because there are other important. I think this is a very significant visit. But brotherly, yes, I fully agree. I bless that. Yes. Right. But it's not a regular visit. It's not only for the obvious reason that they have to coordinate before they go together there. They have to coordinate their contribution, their positions there, because their position will be essential and basic for the discussions on the G20 agenda. However, I believe, this is my personal assessment, is that the visit has multiple goals beyond the G20. One, the visit is coming just after the signing of the Memo of Understanding, yes. And I fully I appreciate that you made it clear that it's not an agreement, it's a Memo of Understanding, yes. Right? But I think that what I assume that was discussed, during this very important visit is, one is the immediate lessons learned from ending the war. We were not ending the conflict. Yes. We were ending the war, just there. There are so many hard lessons that have to be learned by the Arab countries, including Emirates, and the consequences of what has been happening for for the period of the war, the losses that the Gulf countries and Arab countries have suffered from this war, which was not their war, by the way.
Yes.
And how they were pulled into a war and suffered from their own friends before they suffered from their enemies.
Yes.
So that was, in a way, a major lesson to be learned, is a wake-up call to whom it may concern. Two is how to manage and monitor and participate in the efforts, international, bilateral, regional, international efforts during the next 60 days. Because, in fact, the memo of understanding, the fact that it's a memo,
yes,
it reflects very clearly that major issues are there waiting for a solution. And, in fact, the major issues are waiting. So, I mean...
Like the nuclear program, for example.
I mean, the memo of understanding, it
yes,
was a kind of opening for a truce, ending the war, but not ending the conflict. So the 60 days still carries a big risk that can explode or implode any time. So it's very important, you know, that it's becoming now the major role of the Arab countries. The Arab countries, they have two things that could govern their action: the capability and the political will. They have the capability. I think they have to develop the political will, because I think we should realize that we can. We have the power. And I think this is one of the lessons to be learned. And they saw how Egypt, you know, managed to escape, you know, all kind of traps. And they, for example, in Gaza, they
yes,
moved the whole situation from a situation of war to an initiation of peace. And that was in a very implicit way, without too much statements, without getting into too contradicting choices, either to accept migration or to get into a confrontation.
Smooth.
So, and the President Sisi turned both to the two sides of the coin to move it to initiation of peace. Here I want just to underline
yes,
a footnote. The risk comes not only from the possibility of problems in the US and Iran. The major risk comes from Netanyahu. Netanyahu is trying to spoil every and each process for peace. Any peace agenda in the region, it contradicts Netanyahu's agenda. And, for example, he was attacking Beirut in order to spoil the memo of understanding or the agreement between
yesterday.
Yeah, and that's why,
yes,
and he has been trying all through, attacking Iran, committing continuous crimes in Gaza and West Bank, and distract the whole world from the real problems and to spoil. And to some extent, he succeeded. But eventually, I think, thank God, that we were able to reach the point. He will not stop. And he started already something, you know, for example, when some rumors or some information coming from the media,
yes,
that he is warning against a nuclear presence of Russia through Egypt. So well, unfortunately, I know him personally.
Yes.
So I know him in out. So I think this is the big risk, and you know, he will not be contained unless being suffocated in a way by the United States, and he should no longer rely on the Abraham agreements. This is something, you know, and this is one...
Knowing him personally, do you think that he is scared for his political future after the conclusion of the war?
Absolutely. Absolutely. He knows that he wants to, you know, he wants to get back to Israel as a victorious hero. Unfortunately, by the way, people think that Israel has become against, you know, what he's doing. In fact, they are not against the quality of crimes. They are against their own security. But they are not in favor of the Palestinians. So, and there is the real problem is that there is no real alternative, strong alternative for him. But anyway, no matter how long he stays, I think his destiny will be behind the bars. This is, he knows that. But, and you know, what he's getting now is trying to redesign the Middle East. I say that, you know, he is in a coma. He's in a political coma. Because if he thinks that he can do that, he just doesn't know history. And you know, surrounded by 22 Arab countries and other countries, you know, like Iran, like Turkey, and the whole world is against Israel, right? So, but this is my real concern.
Yes.
And that would be something would be discussed in a way, not because he's good or bad. It will be discussed in Evian because I don't want to escape the point of the partnership.
Yes.
But you know, in Evian, you know, it's the situation now. What is happening, or what has been happening in the Middle East, has moved the Middle East from a recipient region to the core of stability, not in the Middle East, in the whole world. The whole world. Look at the implications of the war. It's in Hormuz, El Mandab, Red Sea, Suez Canal. All waterways that where the world trade is running there.
Yes.
Right? And that's why the whole world, the world economy is going a deep crisis that should be felt and seen even just in the coming period. So it's very important to see the man who is the President Sisi, that he was able to play a role with the support of others. I cannot deny that, all right? But that it's, I mean, sometimes, you know, I ask my friends, I tell them something could look theoretic. Look at the map.
Yes.
Look at the map and you'll find that Egypt really in the center of the world, right? And this has caused a lot of concerns for us, challenges. But it's you know, it's the centrality of Egypt, economically, politically, culturally, socially, right, has shouldered Egypt with a huge responsibility. But the fact is that we have to be proud of that we have a president that he was able to succeed in such a very, very challenging problems and crises. So the partnership capacity of President Sisi is something goes far beyond, as I said, courtesy. It's they need him. They need to learn his assessment not only of what has happened, but how to get the world gathering in order not to help Iran, not to support Israel, but in order to rescue the world economy. Because they have been suffering, and as I said, you know, even the growth rate of the world economy is going below. Mind you, there is something very important that we have to differentiate between the G20 and the G7.
Yes, and we'll be having a report about the G7, the industrialized nations, and the participation of Egypt in it for the second time in the past 8 or 9 years, with the participation of His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, the importance of the G7 that it is taking place in France, of course, being hosted by the French President Emmanuel Macron. We'll be having more details in the upcoming report.